you can run, 3-month-old intelligence at 20% of the cost. One of our customers said they were using open code with the GLM 5.2, and it was 15% of Frontier.
Yeah.
So significant reduction in spend. And with our most sophisticated customers, is that it looks like something between 30 and 50% goes to open source and closed source models.
Tuhin, it's great to have you. Every time we chat, I learn a lot. I'm glad that we're going to open source this conversation.
Yeah, amazing. Great to be here.
There's a lot going on in your world. AI, inference, open source, a lot to chop up. But before we get into it, I thought I'd ask you about the scenic route to what Baseten is today. Baseten obviously started in 2019.
Yeah.
You've had lots of scenic stops along the way. Tell us through them and what got you here.
We started the company with a very different mindset, I'd say. It's like, we'd done a bunch of machine learning stuff. And not many people know this, but the way we started the company, which, may be inspiring, maybe uninspiring, everyone can decide, which is that we created a list of things we wanted to work on. And then, then we would go and basically go really, really deep on each of these ideas, and come back, discuss, and be like, all right, should we keep going or not? And we very quickly found what became Baseten. When we started the company, we'd been doing a lot of work in machine learning from 2012 to 2019. And the idea really was, how do we start a picks and shovels business along some large secular trend? And we were pretty convinced that machine learning was going to be a big deal. We didn't know what it would look like. So all right, let's just start building tools for those people who were doing machine learning. The people doing machine learning in 2019 weren't like the people who were messing around with models today. There were a lot of data scientists working on classification systems and recommendation systems and content moderation systems. And so we're building tools for those folks. And funnily enough, we were building serving as part of that, and alongside a bunch of other things. Serving small models is actually trivial. Because you can basically load them and run them in memory, and they run on CPUs. It's very quick. They're tiny. We would go around saying, which is funny now in hindsight, we'd go around saying, well, model serving is a commodity. There's nothing there. We'll give it away for free. And so that was really the genesis. But I think the bigger genesis was spending time with my two co-founders, Amir and Phil, and then Pankaj, who was we found right after that was we just wanted to hang out and build some cool things together. And from 2019 to 2022, I'd say not much was happening. We'd go and talk to a bunch of customers, and everyone was pretty exploratory. All these use cases were predominantly internal, and so there wasn't much budget behind it. And I still remember this moment in 2021. We went to talk to the head of AI, or the head of innovation at a financial services company, and we were like, all right, so what do you want to do with AI? And I remember he was like, he didn't really have an answer. And he just said, but. And I was like, okay, we're really early if we're really in the buzzword territory. But then I think in 2022, the market started to shift a bit. And I think a few key moments come to mind. I think obviously stable diffusion was a big moment. Whisper was a big moment.
Transcription.
And honestly, ChatGPT was a big moment just in general, because I think it set the standard very, very early for the experience that developers and consumers would come to expect of AI. And so, even small things, right? The AI blinks at you when it's thinking. That was, it was clearly something that had been designed with the user in mind. And that was really the moment that everything started, moving as an industry. And then it kind of just kept, the breakthroughs just kept happening. Not many people know this. Also, it was the first time where it felt like inference was a market was we had a buddy called Seth who started this company called Riffusion. And what he had done was him and his co-founder Hike they'd fine-tuned stable diffusion to generate histograms, like spectrograms, music spectrograms. And so they created like the first text to music model. And they came to us, and he'd been working on this for 6 months. This was like November 22. And he said, hey, I've got this model that I'm going to put out tomorrow. And he's like, I'm going to need a lot. It's going to pop. I'm pretty sure it's going to pop. I'm like, sure. He's like, we're going to need a lot of GPUs. We're like, yeah, what, like 5, 10, 8, 10 Gs at the time. And then, it went to the top of Hacker News, and it felt like a lot of the time, but it ended up needing like 40 or 50 A10Gs to serve the traffic, which is very small today, but was very big. It felt very big at the time. And we ended up just spending like 48 hours, like kind of readjusting all our infrastructure to be able to service it. And that's kind of when it felt like, oh, inference was a proper market, because this is going to be, if you believe there were going to be a lot more such challenges, and a lot more such like consumer enterprise experiences, a lot more people need all that help being able to serve the traffic. And that's when I'd say like this version of Base 10 was really formed, and that was the end of 22.
End of 22.
Yeah.
Say the name of the business one more time.
It's called Riffusion.
Riffusion.
It became Producer AI. It was acquired by Google maybe like 4 months ago.
So end of 2022. So this is December 2022. ChatGPT's come out. It's been like 1 or 2 months.
Yep.
Things are blowing up. The OpenAI, Microsoft deals just happened, or happening maybe. Base 10 back then was, you guys had to make a decision to pivot to inference. Actually, the other big insight is your first signal was not a LLM model. It just sounds like text to music. Is that a diffusion model?
A diffusion model. Because it was stable diffusion, because stable diffusion was open. So the entire ecosystem was being built around stable diffusion. That was the first thing. Also, I wouldn't say it was a pivot. I'd say it was more just like a focus, a refocusing on inference, which is like we already did inference. We just thought it wasn't interesting. And it all of a sudden became very, very interesting. And then I think as LLMs got better over time, as the Llama 3 moment happened, all these things became really important for us.
Fascinating. You are now synonymous with the inference cloud, but shocker, you're doing more than inference. You're also doing training.
Yep.
Talk about that for a second. Where does training fit in the portfolio? What led you to it? And why does the vertical independence matter for the customers that we serve?
The way we think about everything at Base 10 is as a function of inference. So like, the North Star of the company is how do we power more inference over time? And so
all roads must lead to inference.
Yeah. So even what we realized over time though is like there's all these open source models and custom models, but what those models create is, real user data that you can then get some signal out of, that then you can in turn use to train better models that ideally you would then go and do inference on Base 10. And two things that we realized, one is like that the more and more that we can own of that loop, the better. And secondly, that there weren't that many great post-training tools. And so as we started to think about that loop, we're like, okay, let's own more and more of that. And that's when we really created, we first launched our training product about a year ago, based in training. And then we acquired a company in November or December called Parsed, who were basically a post-training neolab, more or less. And now we have a product called Loops, which allows you to do post-training, manages rollouts, allows you to do all this RL work, but also all of it is meant so it feeds back into inference on Base 10.
That makes sense. And launching training puts you arguably close to the labs themselves. How do you think about that competitive line? At what point should a customer come to you guys for their post training versus go to a lab?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it does and it doesn't, right? And I'd say it does in the sense that it allows all of a sudden, customers have control over their models.
Yeah.
So it is competitive in that before you were renting intelligence and now you're owning intelligence, and if all owners are competing, sure. I still think that a lot of these, like most of our customers, do and should start at using the easiest thing that they can possibly use, which a lot of the times is a closed source model.
Right.
because it comes with an entire ecosystem around. And we are building out that ecosystem through our Model APIs product. And like that will become more and more fleshed out over time, especially as open source models continue to catch up. There'll be like real viable alternatives right out the gate to use. But what I always say is just go as a customer until you have product market fit.
Right.
Figure out how to use the easiest thing to use.
Yeah.
They were saying that, a lot of it's about like right now they're spending time collecting water by the riverbank, but there's a waterfall over there. It's like go to the waterfall.
Yeah.
Collect the water, and then yes, everything will break.
Yeah.
Once you're collecting that water from the waterfall, but then you can start to optimize.
Got it.
And
So go to the API for discovery, for figuring out your use case, or iterating.
Even
fast.
value, yeah.
But then once you have product market fit, and the waterfall is coming down your bucket and it's overflowing,
yes,
then you show up to us.
100%. And I took that from someone today. I don't remember who it was, but I'll find it and you can give credit in the comments.
Perfect. Perfect.
But yes, that's right. Which is, go find product market fit, then start to optimize.
Yeah.
And some of that optimization might even mean not using open source models or custom models. It might just be like go figure out how to use those other APIs in better ways, or use cheaper models from them. But a lot of the time, when you need specialized intelligence, and more importantly, when you need control and want independence, that's when it will make sense for you to switch over to these models that are, being run, hosted, and post-trained on Baseten.
Is using your models or owning your intelligence kind of a power user use case, or and the vast majority of customers will stay on the bank collecting the water?
No, I don't think so. I think it's not a power user. I think it's just like look at some point, like, what do you have as a company, right? So you have your data, you have your workflows, you have your UI, you have your reward signal, and so what are the things that you and your customers like? At some point, like if I am one of these companies, I want to hold on to that with dear life. That is all the IP I have left. And so at some point, and this is one of the challenges I think that a lot of companies have, is that first you start by querying the APIs and just using them in paths to production. Soon you just start giving them all your data so you can get the best possible answer out of them.
Yeah, in the context or whatever.
In the context. Eventually, maybe you even start giving them all the reward as well, and try to figure out how to encode that in your context as well. And then, as a result, what will happen is two things. One, you're giving someone else's API, someone else all the data they potentially need that you find to be near and dear to you, but you're also adding dependence yourself, more and more dependence yourself on those APIs. So in a lot of ways, you are eroding away both your kind of customer data moat and your financial moat as well. And so at some point, at scale, you need to move away from. I talked to a company that was at scale recently. This was an at scale company that said it kind of hit their gross margin by 25 to 30 points.
Wow.
That doesn't have to be the case. And like that's when I think a lot of companies start to think about how do we do this ourselves? How do we post-train models ourselves? How do we own more and more of the stack? So you don't have to give all the data away. And you can also hold on to the business edge you have with these models.
So now let's say I'm a customer, I graduated from being two guys in a laptop and a dream to a product market fit use case that is the waterfall's flowing. Explain to us in simple words what the counterfactual looks like. Because in the mind of many, it's too much work.
Yeah.
What would that process look like in simple words, having to own your intelligence and maintaining your moat?
Well, look, I think there's like two or three things that you need to have. One is that you have to have a very good understanding of what is good. So like, and this is a problem that we see with a lot of our customers too, is that they're like, hey, can you help me post-train a model? I'm like, sure, but we can't tell you what your users like. That's like ideally what you are good at.
Right.
Look, if I'm creating an app, like I know the utility that my users care about. I have the data on that. So one, you have to have a good understanding of the thing you are trying to maximize. The maximize. But once you have that, it's actually not so bad. So like, one, you obviously need to have a bunch of data. You need to have a way to evaluate how a model is doing. And then through products like ours, a product called Loops, it's actually pretty straightforward to get started with recipes for post-training models. And so we have a Loops SDK, we have a forward deployed function that can help you there as well. But once you have that, you're actually also, in pretty short order, you'll have the ability to have a model that you can run yourself. And that's when you need serving infrastructure. And so serving infrastructure is, comes in many forms. What we believe is that it's kind of like the 3 or 4 different key components to serving models. One is the ability to serve them very fast. So you need to have some know-how in terms of what it takes to, choose. There's like kind of 2 variables here, which is how much throughput do you have and how much speed do you have. And our goal is to move that curve as far to the top right as possible. And then you choose where you sit on top of that. That's the performance piece. The second piece is infrastructure. And so that's not only just having access to compute, but also knowing how to wrangle that compute and run these performant models on that compute in a reliable way. And the third thing is just developer experience and the ability to do the tooling required to get these deployed, but also run them in production. So what that might mean is an SDK to get these deployed, to optimize them, to configure how they scale in production, but then also all the observability, all the CI/CD, all the infrastructure required to A/B test these things and monitor billing, and that's the 3 things. And I think all that serving infrastructure you kind of get for free when you work with Baseten or someone like Baseten.
Super helpful. Can I double click into the forward deployed function you mentioned? As a forward deployed engineer, anytime I hear that word, I want to learn more. Why is that valuable? Are there customers of yours that find it valuable? And talk about that a little bit.
Really 2 core reasons. So one is it can just, at no point when we through our FDE function are we trying to do the work for you. What we're trying to do is accelerate how quickly you can get it done. So what it means is hey, if you did this yourself in Baseten through our software, we hope you'd be able to do it, and it would just take you, let's say, N days or Y weeks. That's fine. Hopefully we can just do it in a third or a quarter of that time with the help of our FDE function, who just has lots of reps in this. And what they're really good at is kind of setting up that infrastructure and scaffolding, so you can move from I have a model to I need that serving a lot of traffic at scale very, very fast.
Right. Also, presumably, a lot of your customers are very, very busy and resource constrained.
Totally.
And so this is helpful in getting them some capacity to make the transition.
100%.
Surge capacity.
Surge capacity, exactly. And then the second piece is that when you're running these things at scale, you need an infrastructure team. And we're kind of like an infrastructure team on loan in that way. But and what we believe is that we can provide that included in the Baseten experience. And what we get out of it is happier customers. Happier customers. What our customers get out of it is they don't need to start up a massive SRE and infrastructure team. And the third one is that what we've seen is it scales pretty well.
This is a plug to everybody out there who tells me that they don't have time or capacity. Baseten will send you the capacity.
Yes.
To make this a transition. Back to the question that we were going down is how does Baseten help these customers? One of the other things that I thought I'd get your pulse on is what percentage of traffic for your, let's say, your most mature customers is going through an open source model or a fine-tuned model versus a closed model? How is that traversed over time? And where do you see that headed?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think this actually just goes. Can I just zoom out really quickly?
Please.
And I think this is what you need to believe that Baseten and inference is going to be a massive, massive business. It fits into this, which is right. That AI usage is going to be massive. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Trillions of dollars to spend in 2030.
Yeah.
If you think about the app layer running at 50% gross margin, and we think in 3 years there's going to be $3 to $5 trillion of AI app layer spend, what that really means is $1.5 to $2 trillion of inference spend.
Model, yeah.
And then the question just becomes how much of that is in closed source inference and how much of the open source and custom model inference. Today it's probably 3 to 5% is on open source and custom model inference.
Dollar spent.
Spent. What's interesting, and this is definitely being driven by the rise of really good open source models and a lot of researchers who are working on post-training techniques, is that you can run 3-month-old intelligence at 20% of the cost. And so what that means is a lot of people are starting to invest.
3-month-old intelligence at 20% of the cost.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter about this. One of our customers said they were using open code with the GLM 5.2, and it was 15% of Frontier, and they were using Frontier, everything Frontier, but they were of using the closed source APIs.
Yeah.
So significant reduction in spend. And if you believe that, so what we end up seeing with our customers is, with our most sophisticated customers, is that it looks like something between 30 and 50% goes to open source and closed source models.
30 to 50% of volume goes
To open source and custom models. No, not volume, of spend.
Of spend, okay.
But they're actually doing like 3 to 5x the volume than the closed source models.
Right.
And so you end up with somewhere where you can do way more tokens at a fraction of the cost, of way more relative tokens at a fraction of the absolute cost.
Yeah.
Where it's like win, 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 win. What we think is that over time the market will mature towards that. But I think, going back to my prior like the thing I just said right before this is, today if it's like 3 to 5% of spend, you know, even if you assume it's 10 to 15%.
Yeah, it's a big number.
It's a big number.
Let me rephrase all of that, Tuhin. So you said for your most advanced customers, the volume is 3 to 5x closed volume. So let's say at midpoint 4x. So the ratio is 80% tokens going on open or fine-tuned open, 20% on closed.
Yep.
And then in terms of dollar spend, it's 30 to 50% of total. So that's 40%, let's say at midpoint of total spend going on. And the reason that's the case is actually a key insight that you could have where the frontier was 3 months ago for 15%. I guess the other way to say it is, like, if you could roll back time 3 months ago, today's best open source model would have been at the frontier.
Yes.
3 months ago, obviously you can't go forward in time, but if you're okay, like I buy last season shoes from outrunning, if you're okay with that, you are at the frontier.
And what I would argue is that, and I would argue that this even goes to the adoption of certain open source models and custom models themselves, which is like, not every use case needs GLM 5.2.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic model. You can use a model for 3 months ago. You can use Kimi K25 and Kimi K26 and get a lot of the value. And we see that from our customers who are who are trying to figure out, for a given use case, what is the best model.
Can I double click into the 80-20?
Yeah.
So think about one or two of your leading customers, and no worries if you can't name them.
Yeah.
What portion of the traffic is going to the frontier model, the 20%?
Yeah.
What is the nature of it? What is the shape of it? What is it, like planning or some kind of prefrontal cortex kind of work?
Yeah.
And then what's the 80%? What is the nature of that workload?
Yeah.
Is it planning and execution, or what's the split?
No, actually, planning ends up being fine-tuned to some extent. So you can actually fine-tune routers to be like, where should I give this? Mm-hmm. Usually it's stuff that's a bit more open-ended. Mm-hmm. And so or synthesizing, I'd say. Mm-hmm. So a good example would be like, hey, you break there's a query. Mm-hmm. You first break that query up into a bunch of tasks. Mm-hmm. You solve a bunch of those tasks, and then you synthesize them all into like the final answer or the final response for the user. And what stuff I've seen is that actually everything up until that last point can go through custom and open source models, and like that synthesis layers goes to the most frontier. But even that is you can post-train. We call it main agent work. You can post-train models really well. It's just like a bit more of an involved post-training to take over those main agent tasks.
Now you are serving some of the fastest growing AI companies.
Yeah.
That's the who's who: Cursor, Open Evidence, Abridge, Harvey, Sierra, others. There's a lot that the best of them have figured out. This list that we just named, they're probably the best of the best. They've figured out a lot of things. Talk about that a little bit. What modality in this is growing the fastest? Is it text? Is it audio? Is it video? What comes after coding, I assume, is number one. So like, what is after coding?
Yeah, look, we work with a bunch of really great customers. Everyone's a bit different. And I don't think there's one size fits all. There's a lot of audio. There's a little bit of video. There's a lot of text. I think more and more things are going to, like, LLMs just dominate so much spend. Yeah. That more and more is that. I think
is that 90% plus?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Probably. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, that's what I'd guess.
And what percentage of that 90% that is text is coding? Like 99%?
No.
Oh, more or less?
Less, yeah. I think coding's a big part of it, but it's not it's a lot of the tokens, but not necessarily all the spend. If that makes sense. I think what we're seeing more and more is customers just want to post, like the way that customers just want specialized models for all the specialized tasks. So I think these models just do less and less over time, and that is definitely changing. And then I think the other piece that is changing is I think we're going to see a lot more biological use cases.
Fascinating.
To be honest, which is like there's a bunch of really cool companies here, obviously like Isomorphic and Boltz Bio and Chai. But there's one of these open-ended generation tasks where more is more, to some extent, where we could generate biological structures forever. It's kind of like code. Like we can just generate code forever, and we wouldn't get bored. And so it is one of these open-ended generation tasks where I think we're going to see a lot more coming there.
Wow.
And then I think on the tech side, like I think we're just going to see a lot more custom main agents. So that's customers taking care of that planning stuff more and more themselves.
I'm glad I asked the question. Bio was an unexpected second pick.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll look back at this conversation.
And by the way, we're not seeing that in our, it's still a really small percentage of our usage. It's just something I see, which is like the computational requirements there.
I see.
For us to truly generate everything we want to do. If you think about like how many drugs we want to test.
Is high.
Is very, very high. And again, and the dollars behind it are very high.
Yeah.
Think about like, pharma is a really good example.
Yeah. Are there common mistakes or common pitfalls that companies make as they start this journey? What advice would you give the next set of startups who are thinking about this journey to keep in mind, or to start doing early, or to start putting their data checkpoints in place?
I'd say create a very, invest in evals early. I think that's one thing, which is like, companies that invest in evals early or have a very good sense. It's kind of like why coding is such a good thing. It's because we just have we have a natural eval.
Yeah.
We obviously have all the sweet benches, but does it compile? So we have this natural eval there. So I'd say invest in evals early. Have all that checkpointing in place. I think be able to switch between models quickly. And the routing layer becomes more and more important over time. And then I think the last one is don't be scared. I think it's just like, a lot of these things, there are a lot of companies that are trying to make all these problems easy for you to some extent, And yeah, like invest early, and especially now where there's not this massive gap between closed source models and open source models. It's like, once you have something that works, start testing stuff out. Because what will happen otherwise is that, we've all seen this, right? Which is like, how many times have you opened up your credit card bill and you're like, it's too expensive? And then all of a sudden you start looking into what all the things you're spending money on. And it's really, really hard to start to cut stuff back.
Right.
But it's a lot more easy when you're intentional and you're like, even understanding how much we're spending on certain models. Like invest in that infrastructure.
Proactive,
yeah. And like, I think the best companies that we talk to are the ones that are like really, it's not that they're necessarily very, very profitable, but they have a very good idea of what they're spending money on. And how that will evolve over time.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I think every AI company needs three things, right? It needs a core AI asset that is sticky. And that is a question of, do you have product market fit or not? Then you need a talent strategy, and you need a compute strategy. And your compute strategy might be use other people's compute. Like it might be like, hey, we're never going to run our own models. But like, I'm only going to build this on top of Anthropic models. That might be your compute strategy. But if you're not planning around that, and you're not communicating that, and your financial plan's not built around that, you just might be left in a place where there's no capacity left for you.
I love that. Product market fit, Baseten check. Compute strategy, let's talk about that next.
Yeah.
And then talent strategy, we'll talk about that next.
Great.
How do you think about your compute strategy?
But now today we sit on top of, I think, 18 or 20 clouds and like 87 or 90 different clusters. And so we have a lot of experience now running this across clouds. And to some extent, they're just like a lot of apps are like, how do we own our future? To some extent, we need to figure out, hey, over the long period of time, what is both the way that we are going to financially make sense, and also like, how do we guarantee ourselves access? I think the big thing really is about like two things. One is, hey, are we in a place where we will always have enough
own your destiny
supply?
Yeah.
And the second thing is like I think a lot of GPU clouds today aren't necessarily built for inference, and like we feel like we have a lot of experience running inference clouds, and you know how the networking stack should be designed, how the storage stack should be designed, like which ISPs, how do you fail over between ISPs, and which ISPs are good, which ISPs are bad. You know, we have a lot of understanding around how these things should be run, and a lot of opinions, and you know we think we can maybe even do a really good job of doing that.
What is the difference between a traditional cluster or a cluster designed for training versus designed for inference?
Well, I mean, you think about, you know, as a good example, you to think about like network storage. Noisy neighbors is a real problem for one of those, and less of a problem for the other one. So, like, you know, with training, you often have to pulling down all the data at once. Then you're doing a bunch of runs, and you know, like, whereas inference, you just need clean data lines, networking lines, so that you know if someone else in the cluster is running a big training job, it doesn't affect inference workloads.
Gotcha.
And so it just requires a lot more. What's the right way to think about it? Like
Clean partitioning.
and also the communicating from in to out in inference, because it's just constant.
Fascinating. Well, you've clearly thought about this at many different layers. Now building your hardware, obviously aggregating, you said 87 to 90 different locations. How much of your edge is in the software, inference stack and optimization versus, you know, securing GPU capacity and wrangling that sort of multi-cloud, multi-cluster setup, or great inference engineering with customers?
Yeah, I think all three. I think the first and two are both. I think all three are software problems. But I think, look, we are best in class in running these models fast. We are very good at the software to run this reliably across clouds and treat the underlying compute unit as truly fungible. So, and that's a lot of software work. That's the thing we've been doing the longest, that we've been doing for 7 years, more or less. And then when it comes to customers, you know, we're pretty good at just being in the boat with them. And I think, you know, that's, you know, and if you ask me which part of the problem motivates us as a team the most, it's probably the latter.
Nice.
You know, there's no point of doing all that if you don't have happy customers at the end of it all.
Makes sense. The number one question that I hear about Baseten is the next part of your compute strategy, which is, why will the clouds not just do this? AWS, Azure, Google. Talk about that a little bit. How do we differentiate against the big clouds, the neo clouds, as we deliver the service to the customers?
I mean, they probably will, and they already do. Like, I don't think, you know, I think every single cloud and most neo clouds now have a managed inference service.
Yeah.
To some extent, I think there's a few things interesting here. One is, like, you know, I think most of the big clouds are very good at being good partners. You know, you've seen this time and time again, right? There's, you know, Redshift existed, but also Snowflake.
Right.
You know, Databricks and ClickHouse have partnered with most clouds. And so, like, you know, I think there is an ecosystem where you can have best-in-class software that operate on clouds. And, you know, the clouds win anyway, because that's where we are running. I think where we differentiate really, though, is, like, again, we're just like you know, you could think of us as a boutique inference shop. You know, like, we're just going to be a lot more laser-focused on the customer, and, like, what we are trying to scale is that customer experience, and less so, you know, we're not running these behemoth businesses just yet, and instead we're just focused on how do we get our customer to value, and we're never going to make the fact that we have to operate at an enormous scale the customer's problem. So that's one. The second one is, like, this market is incredibly fast moving, and we're just going to back ourselves to move a bit faster than the rest of the market here. And, you know, we, as a 300-person team, that's, you know, well capitalized and has the right resources and has a strong customer base, we just think we can do that faster than most.
Makes sense. Let's go to the third part of it, which is your talent strategy. You know, one of my mental models is management teams scale from, you know, 3 stages of a business: 0 to 100 in revenue, 100 to 500, and then 500 to whatever the natural asymptote of the business is. This is a big asymptote for you guys in inference. You've scaled from stage 1 to stage 3 in less than a year, maybe even 6 months. That is a lot of growth. That is a lot of growth for the leadership, for the team. What are the growing pains? How have you changed your role as a CEO?
Yeah, look, I think what happens is that you just end up having to figure out how you can, as an early stage company run by a bunch of engineers, you're often a bit arrogant and think, hey, you know, structure and leadership is bullshit. And I think you can get humbled by that. Humbled when you have that view very quickly. And for us, what that means is, how do we hire, create a bit more structure, create leverage, hire really good leaders, figure out how to scale what that thing that is special, that we can, do one-to-one and make it one-to-many to some extent. And what that means is, making sure we have a really good culture. We we're fast at recruiting. We're fast at taking care of things when they don't work out. And really just again like having the business kind of keep pace with the market to some extent. But I think a lot of it just comes back to hiring. It's like we've had awesome people on the go-to-market side. Danny, Matt, Amy. On the engineering side, Samir's great, and Joey's awesome. Ed's doing some miracles on the compute side. And so, there's a ton that just goes into hiring the right leaders.
If all goes per plan,
your
dreams, your wishes go to plan the next 3 years, what does the world look like if all goes per plan?
I wish I knew, to be honest. Like, if you told me this was the world 3 years ago, I'd be like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. If you told me this was the world a year ago, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And I think one thing that's been interesting is that this market's evolving faster than any of us could ever imagine. I think a lot of it's just like, hey, we think there's going to be a shit ton of inference. Let's just make sure we are the default place where it happens. And whatever that means in terms of adjusting to new models, adjusting to different compute strategies. Like one thing that's been very different for us is that thinking about financing this business is very different. Like we just raised a massive round last week. If you told me a year ago that we're going to go raise $1.5 billion, I'd probably be like, why would we need that? But right now it's very clear to me that we need that, and we probably need a lot more. And so, I think a lot of it is just like, how do we keep pace with the market, know that, the final and largest market is probably inference, and how do we be the default for all the world's inference to happen?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time. This was fun.
Thanks for having me.